She was of the mindset that you do what I was going to say your dad. Isn't that interesting? That was a Freudian slip, but she was kind of like one of us kids that you just do what my dad said. He was the authority figure in the household, and she was submissive to him to the point where she lost her voice. And so as a result of that, I didn't believe that my voice mattered. And I have also carried that with me throughout my entire life. So this mixed message of ask for what you want, go for anything, but your voice doesn't really matter unless, and this is the other learning, unless you're offering something of value to people. So the way that I grew up understanding value was you accomplish something and that's of value.
You're listening to the First Class Life Show hosted by Lindsay Vertner, a holistic personal development show for high-achieving leaders who desire to maximize their impact while creating a life full of purpose, fulfillment, and happiness. So grab a drink, grab your notebook, and let's get started. Hey, First Class family. Welcome back to another episode of the First Class Life Show. I am your phenomenal host, if I don't say so myself, Lindsay Vertner, mindset expert and professional speaker. And listen, I am all smiles. I know you're like, Lindsay, you smile all the time, but I'm like extra smiles because I am just so excited for today's phenomenal guest. She has already given me the smiles and the laughs, and I feel like it's just gonna magnify from here. So before I share who she is and we start the discussion, let me just remind y'all, make sure you subscribe, like, comment, share, love, do all the things because that's internet currency. We have to help and support each other. And how you do that is by subscribing, leaving comments, leaving reviews, post your favorite insights and aha moments on social media, and be sure to tag the both of us so that we can join you in the conversation. We love you for that. We truly appreciate it. And I know y'all don't got time to waste, so let's hop right into this discussion. Hey, Karen, how are you?
I'm doing great. Even better now.
Yes. I just love your smile. I love your glasses, all of the things. So,
thank you.
Karen Laos, welcome to the First Class Live family officially. And I know we've had a little time to kind of chat and get acquainted, but share with the First Class family, like, who is Karen Laos really? Like, give us the good tea, give us the juicy gossip, girl.
Yes, well, I definitely am a follower of dreams. So I'll share that one of my biggest dreams as a kid, I can still remember in high school writing in my diary, I can't wait to move to San Francisco. I can't wait to get out of here. And that was a dream that I had. And I moved to San Francisco in 1994, kind of on a whim, although I had planned it a long time. But I threw a bunch of stuff in the trunk of my car in the summer of 94, drove cross country and planted myself there, and I never left. So that is one of my dreams. And then another dream I will share is that for the entire month of my 50th birthday, I rented a place in Manhattan because I always had a dream of living in Manhattan as well. So I remember thinking, well, maybe I can't do that at the moment because I do love my life in San Francisco, but why not take a month there and see what it feels like? So that's what I did. So that's a little bit about me on the fun fact adventurous side. And then I will say from more of who I am, I don't know, that's one of the facets of who I'm in. Like, there's so many things, right? We're all so complex. But when I was 6 years old, one of the most memorable stories that helped shape who I am is I was at a flea market with my dad, and he gave me a few dollars, and he said, go have fun, but never pay full price. Mm-hmm. And I had no idea that was an option. So that was when my love for the deal was born. The whole idea of you could ask for what you wanted and you could negotiate and go back and forth. And obviously as a 6-year-old, I'd say I did pretty well. It was probably for a little bit more on my charm and my age, but nonetheless, my dad taught me a lot about how to ask for what you want. So I've always had that confidence. Now, on the flip side, I grew up in a family that was very traditional. I'm the last of 9 kids, and my mom was full on, full time taking care of the family. She was of the mindset that you do what I was going to say your dad. Isn't that interesting? That was a Freudian slip, but she was kind of like one of us kids that you just do what my dad said. He was the authority figure in the household, and she was submissive to him to the point where she lost her voice. And so as a result of that, I didn't believe that my voice mattered. And I have also carried that with me throughout my entire life. So this mixed message of ask for what you want, go for anything, but your voice doesn't really matter unless, and this is the other learning, unless you're offering something of value to people. So the way that I grew up understanding value was you accomplish something and that's of value. And it wasn't until my now husband, and I'll wrap up with this story to give you some space because this is your show. But I remember so vividly this turning point in my life when I was dating this guy. Again, now I'm married to him. But I remember coming home after a day, and we had a date or something, and I was telling him how much I had accomplished that day. And he said, "You know what, honey? I love how much you love your work, but that's not why I love you. I love you just because of who you are. And even if you were doing nothing like you're doing in work, I would still love you." And that just kind of blew my mind. Like, really? So I think that to me, that pretty much sums up a little bit of and where I grew up and just how I've come to be in the role that I am today.
How reassuring and reaffirming. Oh, that was so cute.
It was so foreign because even as a kid, if you were resting in our household, you would be given a job to do. There was no value in rest growing up for me. Everything was about working hard and working constantly. And my career, just to give a little backdrop on that, I started in HR, but always knew that I wanted to travel and do corporate training. So I landed a role at the Gap in their corporate office doing leadership coaching and training. But then I had this amazing experience where I was working for now 14 years. And that's really where I say I grew up, at Decker Communications. It was a communications company. And I ended up starting there as a corporate trainer, traveling. And speaking of dreams, I have to say this. You know that after I was in that job for 6 years, I found an old vision journal of mine because I'm a big fan of vision boards and vision journaling. So you act as if it's the day. And so I said, I am working in a corporate training job, traveling 50% of the time, working 2 to 3 days a week. And do you know that that's exactly what I was doing? 2 to 3, not just 2 or 3, but 2 to 3 days. It was amazing. And I loved that role so much. And then I moved into an executive role there. But I ended up leaving in July of 2020 to focus on my mission to eradicate self-doubt in 10 million women in the next 10 years. So that's...
Hey, I know it can be exhausting blazing the trail and creating a legacy. And you're at the point in your life where you desire peace and rest. You want to enjoy both the physical freedom and financial freedom to live life on your terms. You understand the importance of prioritizing your self-care. And you know that you're worthy of transformational experiences surrounded by other high-achieving, goal-oriented women just like you. That's why you deserve to be treated like VIP at the First Class Life Luxury Self-Care Retreat for Women. You deserve to show up and just be you. Away from the titles and roles that keep you busy from day to day. You deserve the luxury to fully unplug. It's time for you to embrace your first class life. Visit firstclassliferetreats.com to secure your VIP spot today because you deserve it.
what
Oh.
is my mission now. Yeah.
I love that mission. And see, that's why we vibe so much already. Just alignment in those values and that mission right there. You have said so much, so many different ways I can turn down the path of our discussion. But I'm just loving, you said asking for what you want on the one side, but on the other side, you lost your voice because, yielding to that figure,
Yeah.
unless you have something of value to add, then you have your voice back. So that reminds me of, that performative behaviors like, okay, I can only do this. I have to be doing this or that or saying this. It's got to be perfect. Got to have that value. Otherwise, I shrink myself and can't say anything, which then made me think of the hustle and grind culture, like always got to work, 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 work. And then as soon as you said, and if we were resting, then they would give us something to do. Like, how much is that showing up in just cultures and behaviors today? I think COVID kind of start to help shift that narrative right there. But oh my goodness. Okay. Let me get a question out for you. My mind is just like in a playground of discussion right now. Okay. So let's start with the dichotomy of growing up where on one side it's ask for whatever you want, but on the other side it's don't say anything. Kind of, so in the Black community, it was like you don't speak until you're spoken to, like children are to be seen and not heard type of thing. Luckily, my personal upbringing wasn't that way, but that was kind of the way children were viewed. So what was it like for you in developing your identity as you're growing as a child to have these two left and right, black and white situations? It's like, oh, I want to, but in conflict with yourself.
Yeah. I remember most of my life, I was just trying to keep my dad happy, like be the compliant little girl. And he didn't speak very much. The other thing that I didn't know as a kid, but learned later, is that a big part of the issue was that he didn't enter my world. And I don't think he knew how. Now as an adult, I just think he was completely lost related to that. But I'd say the most striking and memorable example was me as a young girl. I think I was maybe 13 or 14. I decided to write him a letter thinking, well, maybe that is a way that I could express my feelings, and really taking ownership to say, Dad, is there something that I did? I'd like us to have a relationship. I mean, it was, I think looking back, it was such an evolved little girl writing this letter to her dad, and he never opened it. For 2 weeks, my mom would make the bed. She'd put the card next to his bed, or, their bed, whatever. And then she'd make it was constantly going from his pillow mating till when she made the bed till not. And so that was probably one of the most profound experiences where I felt like I didn't matter and neither did my voice. If my dad didn't care enough to open a letter from his daughter, then certainly my voice didn't matter. But I feel like I became more driven from, I don't know if it was that experience. Again, this is hard to say where that came from, but I truly believed in my heart and soul with his modeling. And also my mom was a very hard worker. She was also well known in the community for being a leader of many different things, whether it was at church or in the community in general. And so I knew that value was placed in the things that you did and accomplished. So I ended up accomplishing a lot of things. And even in high school, I was the president of my class. I was the president of a public speaking group. I traveled all throughout the country as a high schooler competing in sales and marketing events. So that's how I don't really know beyond that to say that I was doing, it's just so interesting. And you use the word dichotomy. And I think that's a really good term for it, because I didn't know anything about what integration meant. I mean, you don't know these things as a kid. You're just trying to figure stuff out. But I will say this, that one of my most proud moments of influence, but you could probably also call it manipulation, is that I went to Catholic school for 8 years, and it was a fine experience, but I really wanted to go to the public high school because that's where all of my brothers went. I went to all of their sporting events. All of my friends were going there, but my dad was dead set on me going to the Catholic high school.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he started playing tennis with me when I was 6 years old. He taught me how to play tennis, and every day we would play. So I was really good. But I thought, what is the one card that I have over my dad? It's control, related to getting, what if I got cut from the tennis team before freshman year of high school, and show him that he can make me go to Catholic school, but he can't, I'm not going to give him the satisfaction of on the tennis team. So it was the hardest thing for my personal pride, but I was so committed. I played so badly. I had these big lobs, and I think he was stunned. I can still remember his face when he got the call from the tennis coach saying that I had been cut from the team, because he couldn't believe it. And then I don't know, he never talked to me about any of this stuff, but I wonder if he figured it out. And 2 days later, and also 2 days before the public high school was starting, he came into my room in the morning and he said, "Do you really want to go to Ridgefield?" The name of the school. And I said, "Yes." And he goes, "Well, you can go." And then he walked out. And then I became the star tennis player there, and he came to all of my games. And so it's sort of funny. But I say that because it's sad to me that a parent would be in such a way that I, as a kid, was kind of forced into that situation because that's the way I navigated it. Was, okay, well, how do I get what I want? Here's the only way that I know how to do it. And that isn't the character that I am. I'm not a person that wants to be out of integrity and not play a terrible tennis game, even though I'm really good. Or was. But yeah, that's a couple of examples.
I like that, because we don't realize that we learn our communication style first by our parents. We see how they communicate with us and the things that they don't communicate, and we pick up on that, and it kind of becomes ingrained in us. Oh, so my dad didn't show affection, now I don't show affection. But then sometimes it can go in the opposite way. So I'm thinking about my mother personally. My grandma was not a very affectionate woman. And so then my mom was overly affectionate, always hugs and kisses and I love yous and all of those things. But I can think about one of my best friends where her parents were not affectionate at all. And she struggles even just giving just hugs. And then here I come and I'm like, "Give me a hug, best friend. I love you." And she's like, "Oh, please make it stop."
So, it probably feels so good, but it's so weird, right, for her?
Yes. And it's so timely, because I just saw a post where somebody had commented on the poster's video, and she was like, "What you said about it being a struggle for you to show affection because you never received that as a child really resonated with me." And so, in just hearing you saying the things that you had to go through to be able to communicate with your dad that this is where you really wanted to be, just made all of those things pop into my mind.
I know.
So, what suggestions would you give to somebody that is maybe didn't pick up the best communication habits, as far as okay, how can I start to be a more effective communicator?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I have a few tips that are my favorite. And the first thing is that I would say to acknowledge is that many of us, when, for example, you're in a meeting, in the beginning of a meeting, and you know how the person leading the meeting says something like, "Who wants to start?" And there's pretty much crickets. I always tell people my number one tip is to speak first. Be the person that jumps in right away, because it's going to show your leadership. It's going to immediately show you as a visible person. So visibility is obviously key in any type of advancing in the world. And then you're not going to have to sit there while other people go first. And then you have this tension of, I need to say something, but now everything has been said. What am I going to say? So it eliminates a lot of nervousness and tension, and you get it out there right away. That can be a great place to start. And even if you don't know what to say, you can start with even something as simple as, I've got a thought. And then in that, as you say that, you can think about what your thought is. So of course it does require some agile, on your feet thinking, but that to me is my number one tip. Another one, because most of us are generally ramblers and it's hard to get to the point sometimes. And I will say I am personally a recovering rambler myself. But the other one is you too.
Yeah. So let me let you finish that statement, and then I'm going to follow it up with.
You tell me. I love it. So I taught myself this, and I found that it has been now for years very helpful for my clients and people as a tip. But when you notice obviously it first requires you having the emotional intelligence to notice that you're rambling or you're on a tangent that's irrelevant. There are relevant tangents, but that's a whole other story. But we're talking now about when we're rambling and we realize, wait, where's my point? What is happening? Pause and say out loud, and my point is this. And then state your point and finish it up, because not only does it give you focus, it gives your audience focus. And that will help a lot. And then the other thing is, other second tip to that is, if you don't want to say that out loud, if you're more comfortable just pausing, gathering your thoughts, and then saying your point, that's another option. But I find that saying it out loud helps you and the audience feel like you have this shared experience where, hey, we're in this together. Here's my point. Let's get to it.
Looking for amazing products to help boost your first-class lifestyle? Then head over to firstclasslifeshop.com, where you can treat yourself to personal development books and workbooks, lifestyle affirmation cards, adult coloring books, mugs, notebooks, hoodies, t-shirts, leggings, and more. All products were designed to help you master your mindset, walk in your purpose, and live your first-class life, because you deserve it. So treat yourself today at firstclasslifeshop.com. Again, that's firstclasslifeshop.com.
So that's what my tip. So tell me more about you. What were you going to say?
So as you were mentioning about rambling, I had to raise my hand because I'm in that club, and I've recognized over the years that whenever I am sharing a story, I like for the person to have all the details, because I'm very detail oriented. And so I feel like they need every single detail, even if maybe it doesn't really matter to the point of the story, but I feel like they need all the details so that they can have all the information that they need to make whatever decision or commentary or whatever it is. But on the receiving side, I'm very much, give me the important things and then get to the point. Like, so I'm a different giver than I am a receiver. And so when I first recognized that about myself, I kind of laugh, and I'm like, they're probably also thinking, Lindsay, get to the point. And some of my friends will be like, girl, you have never had a short story. You know, when they say, like, to make a long story short, now I say to make a long story shorter.
I love it. I love that you know that about yourself. And it's so incredibly relatable, because most of us are in that camp. And I see this all the time. And I know you do a lot of work with corporate training, corporate facilitation, and speaking. And so do I. And it is really interesting to me that it doesn't matter where the person sits in their profession. Most of us feel like we need to give more detail than we as a receiver actually need. And it ends up confusing the message. So that's another thing for anybody listening to keep in mind, that if you confuse, you lose. And more information is generally not helpful. But I feel you. I'm the same way. I've had to really rein myself in with some of these details.
Same. And so that makes me think about different communication styles. And so what tips would you give or suggest to help us identify someone else's communication style, so we can kind of adjust what we're saying to them, because some people do like all the facts, and then some people do want all the details, or just get to the point type of. Some people give me the stats, give me the numbers. Some people are like, make it pretty and fluffy and give me the fun part. And so how would you suggest like ways that we can tell or identify in the person that we are communicating with, all right, they are this kind of person, so I need to kind of adjust what I'm saying so that they can best receive it?
Mm-hmm. The first thing is to ask them. So let me, and I don't mean that facetiously at all. So let me go a little deeper. The first thing that I would suggest, even before that, is do your research on the person if you can. If you can find out what their style is, that's great. Most of us don't have the luxury of that. We don't always know who the person is. And even if we might look them up and research them like I did you with this podcast, it doesn't mean that we're really going to know until we get into the conversation. And so I find that the best question to ask anybody when you're starting a meeting or when you're first getting to know them, whether it's a new discovery call for the entrepreneurs that are listening, or for those, whether you're in business or whatever line of work you're in, or your personal life, asking a person in the beginning of a conversation to say, what would serve you best during this meeting? Or what would you like to take away? So when you start by asking that question, then people, when they start talking, you get a better sense. Or sometimes I will actually say, do you want the big picture first and then the details? Or do you want to dive into the details first? So that's the only thing with that, is that it's more like a drop-down menu. It's not an open-ended question. So I find asking an open-ended question to start is most helpful. Even just saying, how do you best like to take in information? And then I'll adjust that, what I have to say, according to what will serve you best in this conversation. So I feel like simply starting by asking, which a lot of times we feel like, oh, I don't want to do that, I feel like I should know, but that will make a difference when we just ask if that opportunity is there, and usually it is. And the other thing that I find is that by asking, you get a lot more information than you even expected, in a way that can help you pivot how you deliver the information. And I'm thinking actually about a very specific example. I have to share this with you because I know you're a big Clubhouse person, as am I. And I will never forget meeting somebody on Clubhouse, and she wanted to have a call with me. And I thought it was more of a, hey, let's just get to know each other. We like each other, and maybe we'll be friends or something. So we get on this call, and I am so glad that I followed my own advice. When she asked me this question, she goes, well, why don't you tell me a little bit about you? And instead of just diving in, I probably would have started with, oh, where I went to college, my hometown, blah, 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 because I thought it was more of a friends get to know you. Mm-hmm. And then I said, which I recommend to everybody when people ask that question, is, well, what about me most interests you? Or what would you most like to know about me? And here's what was so funny. She ended up then talking for a good 5 minutes about herself. And then she said, well, I guess why I really set up this meeting with you is I want to know if you can coach me.
Oh.
So then I was able to change the whole conversation. She didn't need to know where I was from, where I went to school. She didn't need to know all that. All she needed was to know is, are we a fit for what she needed? Mm-hmm. And I thought that was such a memorable experience for me, because it was one of those times where I really made an assumption that, oh, this is just a friendly call, and not realizing that it was actually a business opportunity. And then she did end up working with me. So that was kind of fun.
I love that, because it makes me think about how often sometimes we will just let things go and not really clarify what maybe we heard, or that what we're supposed to be doing. And that can lead to so many problems down the line as well. I actually was thinking about an interaction with my husband, maybe just like a week or so ago. He had responded, and his response didn't really make sense to the question I had asked. And I said, what? And so I said it again, and he was like, oh, I didn't really hear what you said. I thought you said this. I said, so you were just going to answer and keep going and not clarify what I said? And he just kind of looked at me, and I was like, this is why communication is key. And I'm glad that I double checked with you. Did you really hear and understand what I said? Because obviously you did.
Exactly.
But it made me think about how often we go throughout our days doing that exact same thing, maybe for fear of judgment or fear of failing or fear of not being good enough, especially in the professional world when maybe we're in a meeting with supervisors or coworkers or colleagues, or even with potential clients where somebody says anything and we don't really understand, but we don't want to raise our hand and ask questions because we don't maybe want to appear that we lack knowledge. We don't want to appear that we aren't as talented or as skilled as we would like to be. And so we kind of shrink ourselves and we never ask the question. And then we move forward with this unclear picture of what's to happen because we didn't clarify.
Right. And that's such a good reminder of not being afraid to stop and clarify. I mean, and think about it. If you hadn't said anything, like most of us don't, it would have just gone, you might have been sort of confused and, just moved on, but still kind of always had that in the back of your head of, what was that? And it's amazing how, and of course it all requires discernment and there is a time to mention things. There's a time when it is better to just let it go. It all depends on the situation. But I have found more often than not, I will be the one, because I'm like you, like, wait, let me just make sure I understand that. And I always laugh that communication is such a big deal. And yet I continue to laugh at the things that I mess up and in communication, and I laugh. And then of course, well, my friends or my husband too, like, I'm so glad you're a communication expert. The sarcasm of, oh yeah, that's right, I did it again, I made that assumption, or whatever it is.
Yeah. So in thinking about just my work as a speaker, as a leadership facilitator and things like that, a lot of times, like, we've been talking more along the lines of direct communication, like asking, being verbal, but there's also those nonverbals, because one thing I've learned throughout my career is that, like, the body language will tell you what you need. And so you have to be able to pick up on that. They'll tell you if they're bored with their body language. They'll tell you how engaged and interested in they are in your topic with their body language. They'll tell you if they're confused with their body language. So that can sometimes help you to be proactive in saying, wait, pause. Did you understand what I just said? If not, let me readjust. So what are some tips or suggestions as far as on being better communicators with our nonverbals or understanding the nonverbals of others?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the one thing that comes to mind immediately is remembering to have a lightness in your facial expression. So there's a time and a place to smile, and there's also a time and a place to have a lightness. Maybe you're not fully smiling, but for example, what often happens, and this is what I'd suggest anybody listening notices through, if you can, record yourself on video and see how you come across in a real environment. So what happens a lot is when we're serious because we're focused on our content or we're thinking, we can have a very serious face. And you've probably heard of RBF, resting beef. And if anybody hasn't, go look it up. There's some fun videos on it. But we can have a very serious resting face that looks like we're mad or unapproachable. And obviously, if we keep in mind what's important to building trust and credibility quickly, people need to decide, and they will decide very quickly if they like you, if they trust you. And so one of the ways that you can focus on this is remembering your facial expression. And I have a couple of examples. I have tons of examples of this in the real world, but I remember most when I was beginning my corporate training career and my boss was recording me. She was also the only one in the room listening to me to see if I was good enough to put in front of clients. And I practiced really hard for this. And at the end, she asked, well, how do you think you did? And I said, well, I think I did pretty great. And she said, well, Karen, if I listen, if I just were to have listened, your content was practically perfect. But then she said, but you looked pissed off the whole time. And she goes, and that taught me a quote that I made up and love to say is, we cannot sacrifice connection for perfection. It doesn't matter how perfect your talk is. If you don't look like you're having a good time, that you're connecting with the audience through your warmth and your facial expression, and of course your voice, then you're not going to influence. So to me, that's one of the number one things. And then I remember a very similar example where I was on the other side, where I was doing a facilitation and this guy walked in. It was a presentation skills training. So I met him, immediately thought, wow, this is going to be a hard nut to crack. Very serious expression, seemed really unfriendly and unapproachable. But then I got to know him through that morning, and he was really funny and a really nice guy, very, very easygoing, not at all what his face showed. Well, he saw his video because that was part of the day. So he had to do a 1-minute video, and then we watched it on camera, and he saw himself and he said, oh my gosh, I look so rude and intimidating. And I said, I know, that's exactly what I thought of you. But then we both talked about how that is not who he is, though. So this is the other thing. And this is a whole other tangent now. But when I was on Clubhouse, when I first started on Clubhouse, that to me related to this same story was a huge, huge lesson in how so many people are misrepresenting themselves. Because I saw people on Clubhouse with years of experience, great bios, but the way that they speak did not come across as confident or interesting or friendly. And I know you asked me about nonverbals. So we're talking about what we're talking about here is the facial expression. That is something that I noticed. And that guy was definitely misrepresenting his brand. And he said, I don't want my employees or anybody for that matter to think that I'm rude and intimidating, because that's not who I am. So he had to focus on remembering to smile right out of the gates and to be attuned with that. And very similar to my experience with Clubhouse, which for those people that don't know, it's a social app only. So you don't see the body language or the face, you just hear the voice. And I was amazed. I've done did a lot of coaching, especially in 2021 on Clubhouse. I had hosted a lot of rooms for particularly women to speak up and to get practice on their elevator pitches as well. But so much of it's sad to me when you've got these amazing people, but they're not representing themselves well. So I'll stop there. I could go on that.
Are you loving the First Class Live Show? Then join our private Patreon community. Not only will you help to support our ability to provide you with great content, but you can also get exclusive perks like bonus videos and resources, discounts, episode transcripts, and more. So what are you waiting for? Join today at patreon.com/firstclasslife. Again, that's Patreon, patreon.com/firstclasslife. This is good because no matter what you do, no matter who you have around you, like we all communicate, and effective communication is important in your personal relationships, your intimate relationships, in your relationships with your family, your friends, and then definitely in the professional setting, whether you're in business, whether you're in corporate, even if you're volunteering in the community, communication is everywhere. And it's something that we all can improve upon, even the best communicators in the world. But oftentimes, a lot of people struggle to communicate effectively, which is a part of the issues that we deal with in the human experience. So this is really good. Okay.
Well, you're right. I mean, it affects everything. I mean, I can remember, because the other part of my upbringing, growing up in Minnesota, it's a very passive aggressive communication style in general. So and a big part of it is you don't want to bother people. Like that's all about, I don't want to bother people, but then we can get resentful. So I remember when I got married, a few months in, I don't like clutter. And my husband had all these papers over the desk, which in a small one bedroom in San Francisco is very obvious because the desk was pretty much right next to the living room with no walls. And instead of just asking him to clean it, and if he could, I could not get myself to do that. But I didn't realize what I was doing until he challenged me. I said to him, so, honey, how long do you think these papers are going to be all over the desk? And he goes, honey, use your words. What do you want to ask me? And I had the hardest time. He kept saying, what do you want to ask me? I couldn't get it out because I was taught that you don't inconvenience people, even your own husband. He goes, ask me. And he wanted me, he was trying to empower me to ask, just ask. And it was so funny because I laugh and I think about how I've been on all these stages all over the world, but I can't even ask my husband directly to clean up the desk. And I will tell you, it was so hard, but he just sat there and looked at me in love and he said, just ask me. I love you. And still, it's funny. It's still kind of emotional. And I finally said, would you be willing to clean the papers off the desk?
I said it so sweetly and nicely, like, please, if it's in your convenience, if you have time, just maybe.
Exactly. Boy, that's one I'll never forget because now, thankfully, I'm a lot better. We're 10 years in, but that was hard in the beginning. I felt like I could ask other people, but it was very challenging to ask. And that brought up the parent dynamics, right, of my parents. Like you don't ask your husband for that stuff. He tells you what to do. And yeah, so it's just very interesting too. I think just in personal evolution, how we, and I know, you've got your big self-care retreats and those are so important for all of us. And when we're not taking care of ourselves and we're so focused on others, then we can lose ourselves as well. And that's something I realized, boy, those things from our childhood can show up in the places where we thought we were farther along than we really are sometimes. And then there are other times where we start realizing, I'm not doing that thing anymore. I used to be triggered by that, but I'm not triggered by that anymore. And isn't that cool? So I just think the human experience is fascinating.
Yeah, and there were so many like underlying things just in that example that you shared, because that when we don't use our voice and we do shrink ourselves, that resentment can build up and often does build up in different ways. Because I'm sure the longer they sat there, the more you would get resentful and even angry, like, oh my gosh. And, that can show up in different behaviors and cause arguments and things down the line. And so there's that piece of it. And then how he said, use your words. It instantly made me think of my children because I have two kids, 13 and 10 right now. But when they were younger and learning how to speak and all the things, like that's what I would say to them often, trying to get them to communicate. I would say, use your words.
I love it.
Like, use your words, Tyler, use your words, Carmen, use your words. Like that was a recurring phrase. And it was so funny because one time I heard one of them repeating back to, I don't know if it was maybe to myself or my husband or another kid or something, but something was going on. And I heard one of them say, use your words. No, I think it was to each other. And they were,
really?
And one of them was kind of like picking, being annoying. They were enjoying the bickering while the other one was getting frustrated. And they said, use your words.
That's the best. I love it when you know that your parenting is working.
Yes. So this has been such a great conversation. And if you're up to it, you want to play a little game?
Yes.
So let me pull out my phone here. So this is called First Class Favorites, and it's really, really easy. I'm going to say, what is your favorite, fill in the blank, and you're going to fill in the blank. Okay?
Okay, I'm ready.
But you got to answer in 10 seconds or less.
Okay. All right. This is good.
So no time to think about it. All right.
Okay.
So, really easy. We'll start with something simple.
Okay.
What's your favorite food specifically? Go.
Oh, chicken.
Any particular way you like your chicken?
I love fried chicken. I love chicken on pizza. I just love chicken because it's so versatile.
Got
Not
it.
exciting food, but that is definitely my favorite.
Listen, chickens are what's hot, okay? Chicken wings, chicken pasta, barbecue chicken pizza, fried
Oh,
chicken.
yes. I just had that for breakfast. Barbecue flatbread chicken pizza from leftovers from last night.
See? What's your favorite book, title, and author? Go.
Oh, Dare to Lead by Brene Brown.
Oh, I have that book right back there.
I love it. Yes, I love her.
You're doing so good. So, what is your favorite place to travel specifically?
Vienna, Austria. I studied there in college, and I went back there the first time taking my husband, and I was reminded that is my favorite city in the whole world at this point. And I've been to a lot of places.
Nice. What is your favorite? Oh, so I was just thinking about the difference in like your parents' parenting communication styles and things like this. And so, what is your favorite childhood game? Go.
Ooh, game?
Mm-hmm.
Candyland.
Ah, Candyland. Why was it that one?
I loved playing Candyland. I loved the pictures. I don't know, there was something about the pictures. The game was easy. There's just something fun, and it was very colorful. I like colorful things, and there's just seemed like they were having fun. And something about the like imagining candy everywhere sounds really cool.
Right. And the reason I had that pause in there because it made me think as I started to ask the question was how you were saying like, if we were resting or doing nothing, then they would give us something to do. And I remember I was talking with somebody who said, games. I don't have games. I didn't play as a child, like at all. Like it was always studying or something like that, mostly just studying. And so that's what that little hesitation piece was. I was going through the things in my mind.
Yeah. Well, that actually makes me feel good that you said that because it reminded, I did play a lot. I loved Barbies. My mom used to say I was a really good kid playing, like I played alone really well. With my dolls and with both. Obviously, the game was played with other people. But it is kind of funny you say that because we never played games as a family, like a boardroom game or anything like that. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So when people play board games at parties, I usually kind of sit back. I'm not that interested, interestingly. Yeah, I'm kind of like, oh, yeah, I don't know. So now you're bringing up these family dynamics. Now I'm...
It's because oftentimes as adults, or majority of the time, we don't realize how all the things from our childhood and our upbringing impacts how we behave, impacts how we show up or don't show up. And so it's always fun watching people put these connections together.
I love it. That's awesome.
So next one, what is your favorite activity to do to relax? Go.
Oh, I love listening to just mellow music, like ocean music, anything calming like that, and just laying down and just being. Yeah. I don't do it very often. I don't do it enough, but I will say, and one other thing that came to mind, because I happen to be here in Minnesota when I normally live in San Francisco, but thinking about growing up here, and right now we're in the middle of a snowstorm, and one of the things that I love most is just standing outside in the snow because there's no cars around, and there's something about snow that just feels like it's so quiet. I think it's so cool to just stand out in the middle of not that I would stand in the middle of a lake in snow, but anyway, being outside like that when the snow just sort of muffles all the sound, so it's a really cool sound without sound.
Yeah, I got it. And as you were describing it, I could clearly picture, and it's like, you're right. It is like, it's just still.
Yes.
Yeah. That fresh snow before it gets all muddy and yucky by all the things.
Yes.
Perfect. I got it. What is your favorite song, artist, and title? Go.
Oh my gosh. Whitney Houston. I'm trying to think of the song now. I'm thinking, because that was my very first concert back in, I think, I don't know, whatever. I can't think of what it is. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm gonna have to pass.
Missed the buzzer. You got Whitney Houston out, but you didn't get
No.
the title out.
Anyway.
I will always love you. My name is not
Yes, that's it. I was gonna start singing it, but then I couldn't. I was like, and yes, there we go.
Love it. That's one of my favorite songs as well. Sometimes, if it comes on, like when I'm in the car with my kids, they're already rolling your eyes like embarrassing mom. Love it. What was your favorite snack or candy? Go. Or is?
Oh, fudge. For sure. I love
homemade fudge,
Yeah.
store-bought fudge, any kind of
all
fudge.
of the above. I love food experiences and travel experiences just in general. And so when I think about the experience of fudge, first one is my mom making it. But then secondly, and maybe part of it because of that, going to these cute little towns throughout the world where they have the little candy shops and they have the homemade fudge. To me, that's like, I don't go to the store and buy fudge. That's not right. But if I'm in a town or something, and I think I've only made fudge myself once in my life, but I really have a lot of those fun memories.
Nice. The fudge connoisseur you are.
You could say that, perhaps.
Yes. Well, thank you for playing our game First Class Favorites. And you did miss one buzzer, so you have to give us a consequence because you missed that buzzer.
Okay. What is the consequence?
It can be whatever you want it to be. A few examples from past consequences have been do 20 push-ups, compliment somebody you don't really like, and it has to be a genuine compliment. Journal for 10 minutes, take a shot of whatever your choice of alcohol. If you don't drink alcohol, sub it with some herbal tea or something.
Can I do a past consequence of what I did yesterday?
And what is that?
I shoveled the entire driveway of my brother's driveway while I was gone. Well, the snow came down, and that was not fun. That was hard.
Okay. So, in translating that to a universal consequence, everyone has to clean up something that they have been dreading to clean up, whether outside or in.
So your audience has to have a consequence?
It's for all of us, not just you.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. To you and your audience, I'm so sorry that I disappointed you.
No, it's okay. It's all a matter of perspective because some people like cleaning, little loony. But, so for those people, it's a positive consequence.
Yes.
For me, not so much, but
I like that. So, and I will do something else for, what do we say, for 5 minutes, a half an hour? Is there a time frame to this?
No, it's whatever it is.
Okay.
So whatever you like. So you got to pick something to clean up.
I'm glad I didn't get more than one wrong.
Yes, and thank you for playing First Class Favorites. And thank you, First Class family. Make sure you click the link and click on our private Patreon community and join it so that you can get access to our First Class Favorite Things list. Oprah has her favorite things. Yes. We've got ours, okay? Uniquely curated by all of our phenomenal guests. We have our reading list, our music playlist, our favorite places to travel because we're a cultured people, and because we prioritize self-care here, our relaxing activities. So if you want access to our First Class Favorite Things list, then make sure you join our private Patreon community where you'll get access to that, plus bonus videos from our phenomenal guests and many more resources. Meanwhile, let's get back into this discussion because I know that we're coming close to time, but there's so many things I want to ask you. Lovely Karen. I definitely keep thinking back to this, so I feel like this is going to help somebody. Because we mentioned it a few times and it keeps coming up on my heart to ask you, you mentioned about you didn't understand the value of rest because you had to, be doing something. And if you weren't doing anything, your parents would give you something to do. And then it made me think about the grind and hustle culture, like doing, which also made me think about how you felt that you had to provide value by doing something so that you could use your voice. And so just share with us some tips or suggestions for those of us that struggle in constantly doing or feel like that we have to be doing something to be valuable. Help us with some suggestions on just the genuine value of rest.
Sure. Well, one of the things that I want to remind everybody that no matter how much time you have, even if you only have 30 seconds, and is to be quiet for that amount of time. And I will tell you from personal experience, I can remember this many years ago. I remember just rushing to get ready in the morning, rushing to leave the house. And I said, stop and sit for a second. And it might have only been 15 seconds. But I remember how I felt so much more grounded, just pausing. And that, not to say that I would recommend only 15 seconds, but when you feel like I just don't have time, but you can just sit down and just breathe for a moment. So I'd say that's one recommendation. Related to that is another one where that's helped me a lot is to time box things. So for example, I'm always afraid that, I need to be doing something else and thinking about all these things. But when you put a timer to something, so if I can put a timer for 15 minutes and reflect, journal, read, listen to music, whatever it is, that knowing that I've put an end time on it, then I can relax in that time. Mm-hmm. I used to think that structure was very confining, and a huge value of mine is freedom because, again, from my parents' relationship, it was control. I learned that a marriage is somebody controls the other person. And I can tell you that was not going to be, I was not going to be the one controlled. And so thinking about just even time going, well, I don't want, I'm going to, like, if I structure myself, I'm not going to have freedom. I'm going to be committed to that. But it helped me a lot to be able to put those time frames. And I do that like you. I don't love cleaning, but if I set a timer for 15 minutes and know that after 15 minutes, I might, usually after that 15-minute ringer goes off and I'm in the groove, I will keep cleaning. But it's kind of cool how that happens. And the same thing is for rest, that if you set a timer for 15 minutes, because maybe rest is harder for you like it was for me, then you might find after 15 minutes, you're really enjoying the piece and you have extra time, then you can do that extra time frame. Yeah. And then the other thing I would say is breathing, and specifically breathing exercises. I know one that from the Navy SEALs that is what they have found to be the most powerful to quickly get trauma victims calmed down is breathing. It's 4, 4, and 4, basically. You breathe into the count of 4, hold your breath for 4, and then breathe out for 4 seconds. So even I've done that with groups when we've had very little time left in the training, or sometimes I'll do stress management things. I find that even if you do 3 rounds of it, it can help. So those are a couple of my favorite exercises to do.
I like it. Thank you for sharing, especially that breathing tip. It also helps us to actually take a deep breath and breathe in fully, because oftentimes we have these short, quick breaths and we're not getting as much oxygen to our brain. And so when we take a pause and are intentional about and having a really deep breath, it allows that extra oxygen to flow. And that's, I don't know the science behind the Navy SEALs technique and everything, but I feel like that's probably one thing connected into all of the things that helps them to relax a lot quicker. So thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, I want to share with you a little bit about First Class Life. If you are new to the First Class family and this is your first time tuning in, then let me tell you that First Class Life is actually an acronym that stands for all of the different characteristics and skills that you want to embody into your lifestyle to be able to create a first-class life full of purpose, fulfillment, and happiness. And I'm not going to tell you what that acronym stands for right now. If you want to find out, you can do one of two things. You can either go listen to the very first episode of the First Class Life Show, where I break down each of the different factors, or you can head to firstclasslifeshop.com and buy the book, First Class Life, 10 Key Factors to Creating a First-Class Life Full of Purpose, Fulfillment, and Happiness. Okay? So meanwhile, we're going to ask the beautiful, beautiful Karen, which key factor of first-class life do you resonate with the most?
This was such a hard decision because they're all so good and they're so integrated. But I'm going to go with faithful because for me, faithful encompasses so many things. And specifically for me, my faith is really important to me. And I remember growing up, my mom always used to say, you can talk to Jesus as your best friend. And that's unusual for someone that is of the Catholic faith because it's so ritual based and that kind of thing. And so for her to do that, I remember always saying, like, Jesus will show you the way. So I feel like that faith has carried me all throughout my adult life, just really believing in that higher power, knowing that God has got my back. But I also love faithful because it's about belief in myself. Mm-hmm. And I know one of the with a C is confidence and confident. But if I go with faithful, it's really about believing in myself. I believe in who I am and the strengths that I have to offer, and that there is value in who I am, not just in what I do. So I feel like I've grown a lot in that area. And therefore, I think that faithful is so important. You have faith in yourself. And in my case, the faith in a higher power makes such a difference.
I love it. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Mm-hmm. Now tell us, how do you impact the world as a leader today?
How do I recommend people do this?
How do you?
Oh, yes, that's right. You prompted me with this question. So the one problem that I solve in the world is helping people speak up, particularly women, so they can stop missing opportunities. And as you know, my mission is to eradicate self-doubt in 10 million women in the next 10 years. And I have a social initiative called 10 and 10, which is all about that 10 million women in 10 years. So it's all about helping women to speak up with specific practical tools. And I have a book called Trust Your Own Voice, which is a playbook for women that is filled with practical tools around how to communicate with confidence and influence.
I love that. Now, where can we get your book? Where can we connect with you?
Yes. Well, I most hang out personality-wise most of the time, like to get to know me, is Instagram. And that is, but everything is, go to my website first and you can play around there and see what you want to look for. But it's KarenLaos.com, KarenLaos.com. And Instagram is where I hang out, but I'm also on all the social channels. And I have a podcast called Ignite Your Confidence for women leaders, primarily women leaders over 40. And I just reached 100 episodes actually this last month. So it's very exciting. Never even thought I would do a podcast, and here I am at 100 episodes. And I will say too, for anybody that wants access to me live, I do a show called The Confidence Corner every Tuesday night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern on Instagram. It's an Instagram live for about 10 to 15 minutes. So would love to see anybody. Oh, and then my freebie, if you want to go to my website, you can grab my 9 words to avoid and what to say instead. And that has gotten a lot of great feedback. It's also in my book, but if you go to my website, you can download it for free today.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And I bet you that is a very useful tool and resource there. So Don't worry, First Class family. We will have all those links for you right there in the show notes. So you can just click away, whether you're watching or listening. We will have that for you there. Thank you, Karen, for dropping these gems, because communication is so, so important. And thank you, First Class family, one more time, because I know you can be doing anything in the world, that you have spent the past hour here with us. And we are truly, truly grateful for that. So make sure, again, that you subscribe, like, comment, do all the things. Share your insights and ahas on social media. Don't forget to tag us so that we can join you in the conversation. Meanwhile, keep going out there and maximizing your impact while creating your first class life full of purpose, fulfillment, and happiness, because you deserve it. Until next week, bye. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. But please be sure to subscribe to the First Class Life Show. And don't forget to rate, leave a review, and join our private community so that we can continue to provide you with great personal development conversations to help you maximize your impact while creating a life full of purpose, fulfillment, and happiness. You deserve it.